Happy to see you all.
Welcome, Venerable.
Yeah, we're all here together. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Lars. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Laksam. Hello, Nina, darling. Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello, Venerable. Great to see you.
Yeah.
And I suppose the background is the background fake again, or are you now in your own
fake?
background?
Yeah, see, look, it's fake. It's a fake background. It's just I'm in someone else's house again. I'm sleeping around these days. But you can never tell. Okay, darling, let's go. So we put our little thing up there, our little prayer, and we think. Lars is going to sing us this prayer. Do it again in English, but let's think of the meaning, not just do a ritual. Think of the meaning. We all know if you visit somebody, you'd never go empty-handed. Even if you bring one cake, you'd bring something, you'd offer something, isn't it? So that's the meaning here. We're thinking we're going to listen to the teachings. Okay, it's my mouth, but I mean, we're trying to imagine coming from the Buddha, get the blessings from the Buddha, because where did I get these teachings from? My teacher. Where he get them from? She get them from their teacher. And we can track it right back to the Buddha, this kind of power source of knowledge. So it's got really nice meaning. So here we are making an offering of not just one little cake, but the entire contents of the universe, really, is what we're thinking. Piling them all up, imagining them, and happily offering to the Buddha as a request of the teachings. It's got incredible meaning, you know. And this generosity opens our hearts. This is the thing. Generosity opens the heart. So thinking like this in English, I think. And here, just to say again, sorry. I mean, we didn't learn this in our geography. We didn't learn that the center of the universe, for God's sake, is Mount Meru. And we didn't learn that there are 4 continents and then the sun and the moon are there. We learned about that. We certainly didn't learn that, you know, our sky is blue because it's reflecting off lapis lazuli. I mean, we didn't learn that, did we? So this is an old other vision of reality, never mind. But this is what we're saying here, Buddhist cosmology. So we're visioning that one. And then thinking at the same time, all the delicious things, you know, all the food and the handbags and the music and the delicious objects of the senses, piling them all up, offering to the Buddha as a request.
This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Perfect pure holy gurus, from the billowing crowds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued, exactly as they need.
So as we say this Sanskrit mantra, we imagine the Buddha very happily receives our offering. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you, Lars. And now this next one, it's just, again, reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings, the first 2 lines. And then reminding ourselves that we're listening, the big reason, the big long-term reason that we're listening to these teachings, thinking about their meaning, is so that we can use them to develop our amazing potential to become a Buddha. So we can benefit all suffering sentient beings. That's the plan. So we think until we're enlightened, no matter how long it takes, we are going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then by the virtuous karmic seeds we plant in our mind, by listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha to benefit all suffering sentient beings. Sangye chadang soke chognam la janchu badu jagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog. Sangye chadang soke chognam la janchu badu jagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog. Okay, people. I'm sorry, I've still got a cold. I'm a bit like a bass baritone, and I hope I don't run out of my voice. So, okay, we're looking at this idea of taking refuge, relying upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. We did lots of discussions last week, all kinds of points we've made, and I sincerely hope you've read the teachings of Venerable Dundrup. They're very helpful. So the thing, let's look at now. We'll look at the point starts to go. This is sort of the technical points they start going into, you know, and in the course notes, it's in the tablet version anyway, it's page 16, or in the phone version, whatever. It's called the Causes of Refuge. Let me see if I can. Anyway, it's the Causes of Refuge. So this, it's page 16 in the tablet. I'd probably be 30 or something in the phone version. but let's just look at the point of this. So, so if you're deciding, one of the analogies they always use in the Dharma, in the Tibetans use, and it's both the Indians as well, the analogy they use is you rely upon a doctor, right? It's pretty, it's pretty clear. So if you're going to rely upon a doctor, you obviously there have to be logical reasons, We'd say reason. They use the word reason in a bit of a different way, but they'd say the causes. So what are the reasons? If I tell you I'm going to go to this doctor, the first thing you're going to say is, oh, why, Rabina? So I will tell you that it seems like I'm sick and I want to find someone to heal me. So obviously, there are two things that motivate you to go to that doctor. And that's the way they talk about it here, the way they say in the text, which sounds very sort of juvenile to us. The first one is the fear of suffering. So now the second one is the other one is to have confidence that you've chosen the right doctor. So we've talked about this a lot, and we talk about it all the time, especially when it comes to choosing a teacher, so looking at the Buddha's teachings and choosing a teacher in the present life is pretty much the same analysis you have to do. We talked about that last week, So the two causes of it, one is, why am I going? The reason you go to a doctor is because you don't want the suffering results of the current sickness. It's really logical. But when we hear about it in the Lam Rim, when we hear about it in spiritual terms, and certainly in the Buddhist terms, if we understand where refuge fits into this Lam Rim, the thing we've just learned before this, and we don't even have a module for this because, modern people don't like it. In the Lam Rim, the point before this that leads us to want to rely upon the Buddha is the analysis we would have done on the likely possibilities of suffering rebirths after we die. So if you look at the Lam Rim, and basically discovering Buddhism is a variation of that presentation, but the entry point is first of all, you think about the preciousness of this human life. Basically, Atisha, whose little text first articulated this presentation, this packaging of Buddha's teachings back in the 11th century. And then Tsongkhapa, our 14th century lineage Lama, uses as his basis for his Lam Rim literature, as it's vast. So this Lam Rim, this graded path, this internal gradual path. The first one is like a preliminary practice is to think about actually the conditions that we have at this moment in time, kind of like check the boxes, kind of like look at how fortunate we are. Often when we're caught up in our misery, we don't do that. We go, oh, my life's a drag. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm boring. Life's depressing. My husband's ugly. And we forget completely to get some kind of perspective and looking at the big picture. So like sometimes you go online and you see these websites that talk about 0.2% of people on the planet have enough money to live. 7% of people have a computer. 2.5% of people have this and that. So that's the kind of analysis that a teacher's wanting us to do. And he checks, there's like 18 different little checkpoints, like a little kind of checklist. Basically, you check out and you notice that you've got various advantages that the vast majority of even just humans don't have, and you are free of about another 10 or something disadvantages. So it's really doing a bit of a market research, and then you conclude, my goodness, even among just humans, I am pretty fortunate. I'm one of the 0.00% fortunate people, not rich, but fortunate. In what terms? In terms of having a decent, reasonable human body, reasonable conditions, a house to live in. Maybe you're on the street, I'm not sure. But at least a few conditions that enable you to have the luxury in this life to actually spend time on exactly what we're doing now. If you're in Ukraine right now, you do not have the luxury of actually thinking about the meaning of life. You're just struggling to survive. And probably if you look at the planet, the vast majority of humans have one kind of intense suffering or another. Either you have no money, you have to work 18 hours a day, or you're living in an abusive relationship, or you're living in a nightmarish country where there are war zones. Look at the situation of the world, and we check our lives, relatively speaking, it's like we won the lottery, So when you check all this, the action point from this is, my goodness, how fortunate I am. And then the action point is, I mustn't waste it. Not just sit on your laurels, oh, aren't I lucky? That's arrogant. I mustn't waste this precious human birth. Then you enter into the path. And the first point a teacher gets us to think about is death. Well, first of all, it's coming from the first philosophical view of the Buddhas. His first presentation of the way things exist is that things are impermanent. So he doesn't get us to think about the interesting subtle impermanence, which really is quite sophisticated. He doesn't get us to think about the impermanence of toilets and houses and, and possessions. He hits us right between the eyeballs, and he wants to increase our wish not to waste this precious life by now getting us to think about, guess what, honey child, you're going to die. 1 point. Second point, you have no idea when. And third point, what's your action point from that? So from this, you get this sense of an energy to increase your wish not to waste this precious life. And then Atisha gets us, he takes from all the vast literature of the Buddhist literature, he takes the teachings about the different realms of existence. As we know very well, Buddha asserts there are trillions of sentient beings, trillions of mind possessors. The tiniest percentage of them is human. I mean, not the tiniest, but we're pretty much one of the smallest percentages, even again. So the big picture here is from all the literature in Buddhism about the different realms of existence. But Atisha homes in at this point to get us to think about the likely suffering possibilities of rebirths when we do die and when we don't know, and the fact that we don't know when it is. So all his agenda here is to increase our sense of urgency not to waste this precious life. I mean, we don't think this way. I mean, 99% of us, if we're Christians, yes, you want to go to heaven and be with God, and you don't want to go to hell. A materialist, the best you've got to look forward to is a black hole. So you make the most of this life to get what you can in this life, and nothing wrong with that. That's not the issue here. The Buddha's view, as we very well know, is that our mind will continue. And so he gets us here, Atisha specifically in Tsongkhapa, to look in detail at the suffering possibilities of rebirth. So of course, in the West or in the modern world, this is a completely insane and shocking point, We do not like to think about this. So when we hear it here, so after you've thought about the suffering types of rebirth, the animal realm, the spirit realm, the hell realms, the next point is, this is the point of refuge, the next point is, oh my God, I don't want to have that kind of suffering. Quick, whom can I turn to? Whom can I rely upon? So the basis here, the reference point for turning to the Buddha is this contemplation we've done of these likely possibilities of awful suffering rebirths. This is the basis of it. It's very straightforward. So the energy behind this is, I don't want that kind of suffering. So that's what they mean by the first one is fear. So we think, oh, that's so infantile. That's kind of like childish, making us afraid. It sounds like just like the Christians telling us about hell, all the hells, and making you scared. We sort of feel it's insulting. We feel we're more intelligent than that. But actually, if you look at your ordinary world and the example of a doctor, what do you think? Why do you think you go to a doctor? You've discovered you might have cancer. You're scared, you're scared as anything. No one criticizes you for that fear. They think it's intelligent fear. You're absolutely right, Rabina. You should be scared of getting cancer. Go find a doctor, please. So in those terms, in physical terms, or in ordinary life terms, we think it's intelligent to have fear. But as soon as we hear spiritual, we get completely dramatic. We lose the plot because why? Because we think of it as punishment. No one's punishing us. That's not the Buddhist view. You're not getting punished, but that's how we feel. It's very moralistic, the view we have of this dualistic view of punishment, reward, which is the creative view. I'm not being rude, but that's what we put onto karma. So we can't stand to hear about all this rubbish, these hell realms. What are you talking about? But if you think of it in a simple way, it makes complete sense. If we're taking Buddhist view as our hypothesis, and we know we don't want suffering, like you don't want cancer. When you read about cancer, when you read about diabetes, and you see the physical consequences for some people with these sicknesses, of course you're scared. You'll have a panic attack and you'll go straight to the best doctor. That's completely intelligent. Completely intelligent. Come on, please. So that's exactly the view here. Because the point of this, there's these different levels of practices. And this is something we really take time to internalize. It's very fascinating. So as we know very well, as I repeat all the time, as Lama Zopa, respecting the lineage, would say, this area of practice we're in at the moment, if we're thinking of the Lam Rim, this first stages of impermanence, lower realms, and now refuge, this is the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability. So the thing is here, if we did just this level of practice, and then we concluded after we've thought about refuge, then we then start to practice. After you've turned for refuge to the Buddha, he's your doctor, you then start taking the medicine. You then start actually beginning to practice. And that's the conclusion, the culmination of this first scope, the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability, and you abide by the laws of karma, because that's Buddha's instruction. That's his medicine. You don't want suffering in the future, Rabina? Well, honey child, beloved, petal, don't cause it. You don't want cancer in the future, Rabina? Well, stop causing it, baby. Give up cigarettes. You don't want diabetes in the future, Rabina? Well, great. Stop causing it. Stop eating sugar or whatever. It's exactly like that. It's intelligent advice, but not punishment, not reward. And that's what we've got to really think about, you know. So that's where you begin to practice. Now, if we completed this stages of practice, if we graduated, I like to call this junior school, if we graduated here, abiding by the laws of karma, not killing, not stealing, not lying, not this, not that. In other words, stopping causing future suffering, then you can guarantee that your next life will be delicious. You got a really nice mummy and daddy in a lovely country, with a lovely environment, with money in the bank, with a handsome and beautiful body, with plenty of good food, lovely friends. You will not meet terrorists. You will not live in a war zone. You will not be stolen from. You will not be lied to. You will not be harmed, because you set yourself up for that by creating the causes. That's the result of the first level of practice. And that's perfect. You can go on like for a few eons doing that. You can get another lovely human rebirth and keep getting another human rebirth by practicing the virtue of not harming others. That's the first level of practice. So that this level, this is what they call the teachings and practices shared by the Hinayana path, the first stages of practice. So the first level of, then the first reason for taking refuge, the first basis for taking refuge, the basic one at this level is I do not want future suffering. That is what drives us to rely upon the Buddha and then abide by the laws of karma. But because here, the bigger picture that we are in on the Mahayana path, you know, we're Tibetan Buddhists, so we're also incorporating the bigger reasons for a more broad basis for taking refuge. But even before that, the second level of taking refuge is the second scope of practice, the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the middle capability. So that's going to come in a minute. We've in the structure of the Discovering Buddhism, that's talking about the mind. That's really the middle scope, but we began with that. The very first one wasn't the nature of mind. What is the mind? And then we did how to meditate. So they're really belonging more to the middle scope, but they're suitable to modern people's minds. So, you know, in the Discovering Buddhism modules, we shifted them around, you know. So the second reason to take refuge is because not only do you not want the grosser level of suffering in the future, you also now begin to understand the subtle, the second level of suffering in the Four Noble Truths, which is called the suffering of change. And here you get into the middle scope of practices where you start to become your own therapist, where you start to learn to distinguish between the delusions and the virtues, and you want to get renunciation of suffering and its causes. So you give up attachment, you give up the fundamental causes of suffering. So first of all, you give up the major causes of suffering, which is the actions of body and speech that harm others, abide by the laws of karma. Then you go to the middle scope, high school, and now you even give up the delusions, the branch delusions, because you don't want even a happy rebirth. Then you go to the Mahayana component, to the great scope. And so this now, the reason we add on to these first two reasons for why we're turning to the Buddha, why we're taking refuge. And this is because of, this is now bodhicitta, because I want to become a Buddha so I can be of benefit to others. So there are three levels of refuge. So the first one shared by the path, the first and second shared by the Hinayana path are junior school and high school. The first, the middle, the lower scope and the middle scope. And then you've got the great scope. So we're incorporating all of these here. But the character of the teachings at this point is the Hinayana, is the lower scope, you know. This is where we're discussing the Buddha, what the Buddha is. We discuss this, what the Buddha is, what the Dharma is, and what the Sangha is, you know, the three objects of our refuge. Okay. So the first reason, as we'd say it, the way they say it is cause, the first basis for your turning to the Buddha is very simple, is one, I do not want future suffering. And I would say this repeatedly all over the place, it's something that we actually, although it's the first level of practice, it's the one that we find hardest, which is to use the view of karma as the basis of understanding why we suffer and why we're happy. Because we hear it as punishment and reward so strongly that we kind of get dazzled by it and we can't hear it properly, you know. So the fundamental basis of Buddha's exhorting us to not kill, not steal, not lie, not this, not that, the basic principles of good behavior. Again, we talked about this with karma, and I'm going to talk about it again here because this is the basis of refuge, is that, Buddha's telling us, again, the reason you want to turn to the Buddha, the reason you want to turn to the doctor is because you don't want suffering. It's so simple, it's so clear. So you've got to have this view then. We're trying to absorb this view, take this view as our hypothesis, that we have to know we don't, if our mind will continue, then I know very simply, even if we think of just the human realm, forget the animals, please forget the idea that you could be born an animal, which is like laughable still to us, But even if we just think of the human realm, even if you can posit the possibility of just getting a human birth again, just look at the world now, and it is a no-brainer. If you look around, you can look very clearly at exactly what you don't want. You don't want to be born in a war zone. God almighty. You don't want to be born in a country where you're so poor, you've got to work for 18 hours to get a bowl of rice. Of course you don't want that. Don't feel apologetic about it. We think, oh, this sounds selfish. Don't be ridiculous. No one calls you selfish if you decide you want to eat better so you don't get cancer. They call you super intelligent. But as soon as it comes to spiritual, we kind of get all twisted and up in knots and ridiculous, So the simple thing, the reason to rely upon the Buddha, the first one, is not because he's some cute guy, not because he's handsome, he looks nice, or he's peaceful. Just think of it practically. You're checking up on the Buddha, including, like I'm saying, they don't talk about it in this framework, checking up on the person in this life who is the embodiment for you of the Buddha. You check on the Buddha, you check on those teachings, and you check on the Sangha. You check on this in order to be confident that you want to rely upon. It's so logical, it's so practical, So you check on the doctor, you check on their methods, and you check on the people, like you could argue the patients, the other patients. This is what gives you confidence that you've got a valid basis for relying upon this doctor. But the simple, most fundamental reason you want to go to a doctor is because you don't want future suffering. It is so clear. So like I said, if you can't imagine even being born a bird or a dog, not to mention born as a spirit, not even to mention born as a hell being, if that's too hard for our minds, just look at the human realm, do your analysis, do your market research, and you can know pretty quickly the kind of rebirth you don't want. So check the 10 non-virtues. Buddha exhorts us not to kill. Why, Buddha? Well, honey child, forget again the lower realms, okay? Look at the 3 residual results of killing within a human birth. Let's just say, you will not want to get killed. It's really simple. You don't want to die young. That's called the experience similar to the cause of having killed before. You don't want to die young, and you do not want to get killed. That's called the experience similar to the cause of past killing. And you go, nope, don't want that one. Do you want to have an environment that's polluted and disgusting, where you're unhealthy and sick all the time, and whatever you eat harms you? The water's polluted, the air's disgusting. No, thank you, I do not want that. Well, that is called the environmental karmic result of past killing. And then, do you want to be born with a tendency to kill? No, you do not. Well, then guess what, honey? Buddha says, well, guess what, Rabina? The solution is, sweetie pie, stop killing now. It's not complicated. We're moving towards karma now, okay, which is the beginning of the taking of the medicine. But this is the advice. We're looking at Buddha's advice to see if we think it's worthwhile relying upon him. Now you look at if you've got a human life, let's say, and look at the next non-virtue, then it's called don't jump on the wrong partner. You've got attachment to people, misusing your body based on sexual attachment. Well, check on that one. Why would Buddha tell me to do this one? Is this a good medicine or not? So let's look at the results of doing such an action. What are the experience similar to the cause of cheating on your partners would be that all your relationships keep breaking up. Your wives leave you, your husbands leave you, your children leave you. No relationship lasts. Then you do want that? No, thank you. Or solution, don't cheat on your partners, babe. Environmental result of sexual misconduct is, this is more to do with the actual nature of the mind, of intense sexual attachment. It's very kind of, and this is not being rude, don't hear it as moralistic, but it's a powerful attachment, thinking all day of sex. Can you imagine that suffering? I mean, we think of eating all day, but look at the one of you thinking of jumping on people all day, never stopping thinking about sex. You can think of that. The suffering of that is unbearable. So the environmental result of that is that, everything is slimy and smelly and disgusting and covered in urine and feces, like filthy environments. Do you want that? No, thank you, Buddha. Well, honey child, don't cheat on your partner. Try and control your poor old sexual attachment. It's not complicated. It's not punishment. It's Buddha's observation of the way the universe exists, of the causes of suffering, So that's karma. We're talking karma, which is the beginning, which is after refuge. But here we're looking at the basis for checking on whether Buddha is a valid doctor. And how do you do that? You check his teachings. You check this, you think about it. Okay, next one would be, for example, the third one of the body, negative action, would be stealing. Well, honey, please look at the world. Do you want to be poor? No, thank you. You don't want to be poor. Well, then don't. That's the experience similar to the cause of having stolen, taking the ungiven. You don't want that. You know that when you go to the bank, you want to get credit. You don't want to not get credit. You don't want people to not pay their debts. You don't want to be poor so you can't even get a grain of rice. You don't want that. Look at the world. You don't want that suffering. It's pretty clear. What about the environmental results? Well, all the environmental results of all these actions is literally the physical world, the way it impacts upon you. And if it's a negative action, it won't be nice, And then you don't want the tendency to be mean and miserly. You do not want that. That's just 3 of the body. What about the speech? 4 of the speech. Do you want people, the experience similar to the cause of lying is people will not believe your words, even if you're speaking the truth. You know what a nightmare that is. Do you want that? No, thank you. Do you want the environmental result of, the experience similar to the cause, let's say, of harsh speech? Well, the environmental result, I think, of harsh speech is everything is just like you're born in a desert. Nothing can grow. You don't want that. I mean, this is the simple explanations in the views of karma, which is the Buddha's teachings, which is where you begin to take the medicine. This is the medicine. This is the medicine. You don't do this and don't do that and don't do this. There's not even a discussion at this point about do this or do that. It's merely don't do this. Good enough, Good enough. So this will guarantee the first scope. If you check the list, 10 little things, don't kill, don't, the 10 things of the body and speech and the mind. Just this little bit of advice, of course, practice in the context of vows, like we've talked, and practice in the context of purifying every day. You can guarantee, because karma is a natural law. This is Buddha's teachings, how you check the Buddha and you check his teachings, his medicine. And you check the Sangha, the exponents on this planet of these teachings, the efficacy of them. You check these and have confidence. So then this is what you're relying upon. This is what refuge means. You have some confidence. So 1, you don't want the future suffering. And then 2, checking on the medicine that the Buddha recommends, you have confidence that he's a valid doctor. So there's 2 causes for refuge. 1 is fear of the future results, and 2 is confident that you've chosen a valid doctor. Then you commit. It's common sense. It's common sense. It's common sense, See you. I can't see a thing. It's a blur. I'm as blind as a bat without my glasses. And I have to put them on top of my ears, not behind, because they're too tight, Anyway, never mind. So now I want you to ask me questions. Come on. Based on what I've just talked about, ask me some questions or any questions from last week, whatever you like. Okay. Go, people. Are there any questions in there, Tara, darling?
Yes.
From last week?
None in the box. We
Nothing
did
from last
have
week?
one from last week.
Good. Ask me.
Christian. Oh, sorry. Christian, are you here tonight? It's okay. My apologies. I didn't
asked
jot
her,
it down.
Ask it.
Wolfgang. Wolfgang has one.
Oh, where are you, Wolfgang? Good. Hello, sweetheart.
Hello,
Talk to me.
Robina.
Talk to me. Yes.
Could I please ask you again about your broken leg? I think this is so interesting for me. that I can see in the world that very often wonderful things come out of bad things.
Yes, exactly.
How does this fit together?
Wolfgang, this is a perfect question, and this is again showing the levels of practice. So it's a bit like the very first level of, it's a bit like use like botany as an analogy. If you first have to learn the laws of botany, which means you have to distinguish between, let's say, a herb and a weed. Would you agree with that? You have to first learn the nuts and bolts of what grows, and you're going to learn that some are productive and you can eat them, and if you eat other ones, they will poison you and kill you. Are we together? Are we communicating so far?
Yes.
So you understand. So then now that's the first level. So this is the first level here. There are some actions that will bring karmic results of suffering, and there are some actions that will bring virtuous results. It's like learning the fundamentals of botany, learning the fundamentals of good ethics. That's the first step. Now, with the botany analogy, as you become a better and better botanist, a better gardener, you can then learn the most sophisticated methods where you learn to use the poison, and you can use it as medicine. But you can't use it as medicine until you first know its poison character. So it's a more sophisticated level of practice. That's simply the answer. So given that you know you've got a broken leg because you were foolish and you didn't learn all the laws of skiing, you learn about that first, but now you will try to avoid it. But now, having got the broken leg, you can now learn to use it as grist for your mill, to learn about karma, want to not do it again, but get the good things from it. Learn to use your suffering as part of the path. That's the more advanced level, Wolfgang. Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can see this with my friends who never had any trouble in their life. They are just floating through life.
Exactly.
They don't go anywhere.
That's it, because we got this hubris of, oh, aren't I lucky? We sort of take life for granted. Yeah. It's sort of like you've got a garden full of vegetables, but you don't know botany, and you just got this arrogance of thinking, aren't I lucky? No, you're not lucky. You bloody well worked hard in the past. So when we learn the karmic one, we really value life in a more precious way, and we have the suffering, we can learn from it, but we know the cause of it. We know why it's coming, not just superstition. You're so right, Wolfgang. Yes.
Yeah. And because in this spirit, I don't see suffering as anything wrong. Suffering is wonderful because it shows you where your trouble is, where your problem is.
I know, but I think that you're missing the point. I think you're missing the first point. Trouble. Okay. You first learn how to ski.
Yeah.
Learn the laws of skiing, and then you don't do it properly and you break your leg. So surely you don't want to, surely the most fundamental learning is to learn it again to ensure you don't break your leg in the future. But meanwhile, you can use the broken leg. It's not, if your broken leg is the only way you're going to learn, then you're going to keep breaking your leg. And as one Lama said, there's only so many times you can break it before you can't heal it anymore. So you've got to not see it as fundamentalist. You see, one, there is a cause of a broken leg, and it's because you didn't learn skiing properly. You learn it, you understand it. And now, given you've got the broken leg, you can work with it. But the final one is you no longer want to have a damn broken leg, and you'll make sure you learn the laws of botany and skiing and virtue properly, because you want to finally get rid of all broken legs and have a healthy mind so you can be a benefit to others. And that's so you've got to see the two parts of it.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You understand my point, Wolfgang?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, good. Fantastic. Who else, Tara?
Lorraine.
Hello, Lorraine.
Hello.
Yes.
Going off the broken leg analogy, I have been diagnosed with learning disabilities, and I've been, people will either treat me like I'm incredibly stupid or they will give me a chance. And I'm highly educated. I have 4 college degrees, but it took me 12 years to get them.
Yeah.
And I have this tendency to space, and I have a tendency to trip over my thoughts. It's like trying to drive a stick shift and one of the gears is stripped. So I'll be going along okay, and then I'm not catching. So I'm wondering about what your perception is on that, considering like both the broken leg analogy and also the karmic implications.
Well, I mean, I hear these diagnoses, and then I hear you talk, and I can hear you're a thoroughly intelligent, well-educated human being. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be naive here, but where's your problem?
The problem is
I'm not going to interested in these medical things. I want you to tell me what you think your problem is.
My problem is socially. I have a very hard time. I can't really I get along with people just fine, but I miss social cues like mad. And
again, tell me what you mean. I'm finding you a thoroughly nice person to talk to. I can't see you missing any cues here. I don't think you're talking to me like I'm a dog or something. I think I hear what you're saying, but I'm purposely arguing with it, darling.
yes, I understand.
We're all got something. We're all limited in some way. And in the West, we love to put these vast, massive concrete labels on every tiny thing. I mean, where people, I'm not trying to insult or diminish what you're saying, but I don't. Frankly, we've all got different problems. We've all got different.
I think that's one of my issues is that I'm not very easily insulted. And
well, let me tell you something. I'm about to think about this point. You listen to me, Lorraine. I think the basis of a lot of this is somehow a very deep assumption in our modern psychological models that a normal person has lots of anger, some jealousy, a lot of attachment to what people think, worrying about what people think. We think they are normal qualities. That on the one hand, now you say you don't have much of that. So as far as that model is concerned, you're called mentally ill. Well, honey child, I would say you're less mentally ill because you don't mind what people think, because we assume it's a normal thing. So actually, I really question the fundamental assumptions. Come on.
I'm questioning what I can't seem to keep a job. I can't, I don't get along well in a corporate environment, and that's
perfectly sounds very intelligent to me. Nothing wrong with you. I'm not
except that I'm not able to survive right now. I'm not able to keep a job. I'm not able to make my car payment or payments on anything.
Okay, that's a different discussion. That's a different discussion. So what do you mean you're not able to keep a job? What happens? You have a mental breakdown? You hit people? What goes on?
No, I don't hit anybody. I'm generally nonviolent, but I do have mental breakdowns. I also have PTSD and other issues. So
well, PTSD is simply called attachment and aversion, and it's called anxiety. Yes. I'm not trying to be insulting. So yes, when you're in a job, you do the job, and what happens? You can't bear the strain, so you resign, right?
Well, either that will happen sometimes, but more often I'm surrounded by people who do not understand why I communicate the way I do and don't. And they are usually, especially in this culture I am here, they seem to be very highly insulted by the way I speak. I use big words. I don't know what it is exactly, but it seems like I have a hard time catching on to different things. I can't do.
I hear you, Lorraine. I hear you, Lorraine. But all I know is when I'm talking to you now, I don't hear you using big words. I hear you perfectly civilized. You're very professional. You're very intelligent. You're very kind. I'm not trying to question these diagnoses. I'm asking you maybe to question them. I'm asking you to question them. And there's a series of assumptions. We're trying to fit ourselves into the tiniest shape possible. It's just bizarre. We have these narrow ways of defining people. I hear your point that you say you can't keep a job and therefore you can't pay your payments. That part I hear. But I don't know what to say to you, Lorraine. I don't know how to answer you because we have perceptions of ourselves, darling. I'm really discussing the perceptions we have of ourselves. That's what I think this discussion is about. So everybody can have an opinion about you, including medical people. And if you buy into those opinions, then that's up to you to decide, you know.
Yes. So when it comes to like training your mind, as has been discussed before, and I'm finding the meditation, specifically the purification meditation. If I do that every day, life just improves.
That's wonderful. There you go.
And it's very, very helpful to me. I just need to keep it up. I have a tendency to slip out of things.
Well, that's normal for everybody. We're all lazy, darling.
That's normal. It's not just me.
It's normal, exactly. So listen, Lorraine, I just think there's nothing wrong with people diagnosing what they think is our problem or not problem. But I really feel, all I know is, I'll tell you this. Back when I was, in Australia, I'm one of 7 siblings, and we're all busy, volatile people, just like me. Maybe my brother, who's the 7th, isn't. It's kind of interesting. We're all different. I'm kind of joking a bit, but I'm not. And every one of us at some point back in the 60s, we were diagnosed as manic depressive, which is what the world calls bipolar now. All I know is back then, and I will have to control my language. I won't swear too much because I was an old radical lefty political activist. I was a feminist. I remember thinking, excuse me, what are these labels? I'm called this. I said to myself, I don't give a damn in hell what these labels are. I want to be, if I'm crazy, I'm going to be crazy because I want to learn to know my mind and work out what I am and what I can and what I can't do. And I mean, I'm not dismissing people's things, but I'm saying we can buy into so strongly these views in the modern world, they can paralyze us. So I remember thinking, screw you and your boring, and I was a feminist at the time, your male medicine. I'm going to work on my mind. And so I've never been afraid of that part of my mind. I've got a very busy mind, a very, as you can see, you know, and I've learned not to be afraid of all those parts and learned to, and now with the Buddhist view, I found just supremely incredible as a method for interpreting my own states of mind, identifying the states of mind, seeing the ones that cause me suffering and accepting the world, knowing the world. I mean, you know, knowing that, I mean, I fit into certain labels the world has. I don't give a damn in hell. I've got the Buddhist view for me that I find it supremely intelligent and it's something I can use for my mind, you know. I don't buy into those labels. I'm not saying there's not some validity in them. Some people are extremely mentally ill. There's no question. But the worldview of what, you know, like what you're talking is certain just qualities of human beings. We're so narrow in our definitions. So, honey, my main advice to you is stop buying into all these damn labels and seeing them as and being so concrete about that. That's my suggestion to you. And seeing your good qualities and seeing your good qualities from this, seeing your good qualities. You are fortunate not to mind so much these certain things. Some people, I mean, I'm just talking a very broad, general idea, you know, here. So meanwhile, I hope you get a job because you need money to live. I accept that part of it. I accept that part, knowing. Well, maybe aim for something humble and simple, like go work in McDonald's or something and earn $10 an hour. So, I mean, don't, you know, think because you're highly educated, you've got to get a highly educated job. You don't, darling. Keep it simple. Go for any job at all, and that'll open the door to getting something so you get some money in the bank. That's another suggestion I've got.
Okay, thank you.
Me. Are you communicating, darling?
Yes, thank you.
Good, Lorraine. Thank you, sweetheart. Who else?
Yes, I have the question from last week that was asked in our group by Christian. And he had asked, we're talking about what is the difference between direct realization and direct perception of emptiness?
There's no difference, just terms, that's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? No. Anything about refuge that I'll be discussing this morning? Any of the points I'm making, that the basis of why you rely upon the Buddha, you know? So I don't remember, so okay, let's continue. I don't remember, I'm sorry, I forgot what I did on the first day, but let's just look again at the meaning of these words, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It's just the way they talk, you know? So like I said, there's this, you know, we'll talk again, I'll mention this. I did mention, but I want to say it again. They talk about absolute Buddha and relative Buddha, absolute Dharma and relative Dharma. We did talk about this, but I'll say it again. And absolute Sangha and relative Sangha. And this is really quite important to understand. So what they mean by absolute, don't think it's kind of fancy. It means the actual Buddha. So actual Buddha is the word that's used to refer to the fully developed mind, consciousness, which, as we know from the Buddhist perspective, is not physical. So by the time you've got to that level, and well before that, frankly, you no longer need to have bodies. Any kind of body born into samsara, human body, animal body, whatever, is the fruit of negative karma. So by the time you get to certain levels of spiritual practice, you don't create the cause to have gross bodies. You don't need a body. So by the time you get to the Buddha, you don't need any kind of body. So the absolute Buddha means the actual enlightened, omniscient, all pervasive, all compassionate, all kind, all loving mind, fully developed in all the goodness and totally free of all the rubbish. So that consciousness, this is kind of interesting, that consciousness being not physical, remember? This sounds pretty cosmic to us, but consciousness is not physical. The word mind and consciousness is synonymous. When it's fully developed, then it is no longer, you know, it's no longer kind of hampered by anything. Our mind is also not physical, right? But our mind is stuck in this body because we're driven by ego grasping. We're driven by all the delusions and countless lifetimes of very strong programming, negative karmic programming. So our mind is stuck in this body. We discussed this, I think. But as we progress spiritually, we expand our consciousness. We're no longer hindered by time or space or matter. This seems logical. So by the time you're enlightened mind, you literally exist wherever there can be existence, as much as you can get your head around that. I know as a Catholic, I love the idea that God is everywhere. It's exactly the same here. So now that's actual Buddha. But now, if you're going to rely upon a Buddha, How can you rely upon that? It's too abstract. It's too subtle. We don't have enough wisdom to access that mind. So out of enormous compassion, those Buddhas, all those beings whose minds pervade the universe, whose minds are perfected, they manifest, consciously manifest in bodies that are suitable for us. So the one behind us, this picture, this statue, this statue of Buddha from Thailand, that's the manifestation of the body of the Buddha at the time of the, 2,500 years ago, the Buddha who was first a Hindu and then he diverged in his own direction, and then he was teaching. Now, so that's the relative Buddha. This is the Buddha that we're trying to rely upon, whose teachings we are now at this point in the Lam Rim. We're checking up on the teachings, the Buddha and his teachings, the Dharma. So this is the Buddha we're discussing, the relative Buddha, And that's the one we can see and hear. Okay, now he's dead, of course. So what are we going to rely upon is hearing about the Buddha, listening to his history. If we met him, and of course we can't, that's where the teacher comes in. They're the manifestation in this human form for us right in front of us, who are the ones whom we can learn this from, but we check on the Buddha and his history and who he is and the validity of him and so on and so forth. Then you've got the absolute Dharma. Well, the Dharma here, I think this word, I don't even know quite what it means. It's a Sanskrit word. In Tibetan, it's chur. It's got different uses, actually. But broadly, it's referring to the spiritual teachings. So the absolute Dharma, speaking in this way, is the wisdom, the knowledge in the mind of a Buddha, but not just a Buddha, but in anyone that's called a superior being, Arya being, which is the label you get from the first moment of your non-conceptual direct insight or direct perception into emptiness. From that second, you become an Arya being, a superior being. From that second, you've cut the root of samsara and you can't fall back after that. So the wisdom, the knowledge about reality, about impermanence, about karma, about compassion, about emptiness, the wisdom fully developed, well, not all totally fully developed yet, but the wisdom about those things, the direct knowledge of reality in the minds of those superior beings. The second one, the Sangha, the Dharma, in the minds of superior beings, which is the third group. So that is the actual Dharma. So in thinking of the Buddha, then the actual wisdom in the mind of a Buddha is the Dharma. But again, you can't access that. We can't see the Buddha's mind, for God's sake. So the Buddha speaks words, concepts. That's the level we function at. That's why to access the Dharma, you need the ability to conceptualize, which is a human skill. It's still a relatively limited level of conceptual, a level of knowledge, but it's the level we're existing at. So we need the Buddha to speak words. In other words, all a word is the articulation of a thought. I mean, of course we know this, but it's important to join the dots, A thought is the mind. So all the knowledge in the mind of the Buddha is the actual Dharma. But how kind a Buddha is in manifesting in a bag of bones, looking like you and me, and then speaking words. And words are literally the articulation of the thoughts, of the wisdom in that mind. That's the relative Dharma. This is the main one. You can look at 42 Buddhas every day and make you very happy by looking at how handsome and beautiful they are. What good is that until they open their mouth and give you advice? That is the main Dharma. That's the relative Dharma, and it's the speech, and that's indicated, we know, represented by books, videos, audios, you name it. That's your relative Dharma, and without that, you cannot get enlightened. So it's the same. I use the analogy of music. So you've got your absolute musician, who is the all-knowing, the mind of Bach, to say like that, Bach's mind. Then you've got the absolute, but we can't access it. So what does he do? He appears as a human being, Mr. Bach, picture of Mr. Bach. Then you've got the absolute music. Think about this. The actual music in the mind of Bach, the actual music is in the mind of Bach. The actual music, the real music, is his knowledge of music. But we can't access his mind. So what does he do? He writes all these little cute little notations on a piece of paper with little wiggles and notes and things. It's a language, isn't it? And you learn that language and only you can become your Bach now. It's exactly the same here. So the power of the speech one is the direct one. You can read the words, but that's an indication of the speech. That's why they talk about the power of speech. We know this, you know. You could sit there and get a book of the Dalai Lama, who is said to be the Buddha, who is said to embody this wisdom. You could read the words yourself, and a person will hear them, and that's pretty powerful. But if you hear those words out of the mouth of the Dalai Lama, look at the difference, you know. Look at the difference. It's incredible. So the power of speech is stupendous, I tell you. That's why we do this lovely practice in the mornings. You know, when I do my morning meditation for TNL, for Tuk Nobuling in the mornings, this morning we're doing it this month, you know, it's the meditation on the power of, on blessing the speech. Speech is hugely powerful. You know, for example, in the practice of generosity, one of the 6 perfections of the bodhisattva, the first level of generosity is giving things. This is unbelievable. The second level of generosity is giving spiritual advice. Lama Zopa says, you know, you could give food to every person on this planet. The merit of that is inconceivable. But you could give one piece of spiritual advice to one person, and that is more powerful because that can then help that person get enlightened, and that person can benefit countless millions of people. That's logic, you know. So the speech is unbelievably important. So I need to purify it, to control it, to make it valid, to make it virtuous and powerful. So important. So that the refuge, the actual real refuge, is the refuge of the Dharma, the relative Dharma, which is the books and videos and audios of the words, the thoughts of a Buddha. This makes sense, you know. If you don't have those music books, you cannot play the piano. You can't access Bach, the man's dead. You need the books. It's so clear, you know. So you must check on this. This is the practices of the Buddha. This is the medicine. This is where you actually start to practice. So here we're talking about refuge, so we have to check the teachings of the Buddha to see if there's some validity there. Of course, it's quite difficult for us because we, you know, but that's all we can do, have confidence. Then you've got the Sangha, the spiritual community, which is really like the other musicians, your community of musicians. You can have Bach and you can do your own piano playing, but if you can't hear another human being playing piano, if you can't discuss it with other human beings playing Bach, you're kind of lost, you know. You've got to have a community of good supporting practitioners. It's sort of just so logical. So the absolute Sangha, spiritual assembly, as they call it, is those so-called superior beings. And they can be the homeless person down the road, could be a smelly old uncle you think is a creep. We do not know who anybody is. They say that in the Mahayana teachings. We cannot tell by looking at whoever anybody is because our view is so limited. So the superior beings, the actual superior beings, are the ones who hold that knowledge. There's a lovely word in Tibetan, rigsin, knowledge holder. The ones who are practicing this path. They're the real knowledge holders. They're the real spiritual community, but we can't recognize them. So we've got the relative Sangha, the relative spiritual community, which for the Buddha is the ordained monks and nuns, you know. Buddha would say that the presence in any one place of at least 4 fully ordained monks and nuns is actually the criterion of the existence of the living Dharma in that place. So again, this idea of living knowledge is very logical. I mean, you know, I learned cooking from my mother. Where did she get it? From her mum. Where did she get it? Her mum. And I guarantee you can track it back for centuries, an unbroken chain of knowledge holders of cooking. If there's some period in there where cooking disappeared, where cake making disappeared, that's when it becomes myth. The knowledge is dead. So living knowledge is embodied in human beings, you know. When the Tibetans first came into exile, the main concern of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the high lamas, all the holy beings, the rigsins, the knowledge holders, the most urgent thing was to find land where they could build their monasteries, where they could continue to bring people, the younger minds, and pass on the knowledge to from the older to the younger. So it continues to be a living tradition. This is incredibly important. The same with Bach, you know. I learned from my mother. She taught me singing. Where did she get it from? And she could her teacher, and you could track it back in an unbroken chain of real living musicians right back to Bach. So living tradition is incredibly powerful, you know. So the relative Sangha is the presence of fully ordained monks and nuns living in the fullness of Lord Buddha's Vinaya. That's the indication of the presence of living Dharma in one place. But the real knowledge, of course, the real living Dharma is held in the minds of the absolute Sangha, the absolute, the Arya beings, you know, which makes so much sense. Okay, any questions about all that? That's just the Buddha Dharma Sangha. We discussed these before, but I'm saying them again. Any questions, people? I'm running out of voice again. I'm so sorry. Nothing there, Tara?
No, I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay. What else, people? Anything? Nothing? Okay. Cyril has something. Yes, Cyril.
Yes, Venerable.
Good.
What is the purpose of understanding the difference between the actual Buddha and the relative Buddha, the actual Dharma and the relative Dharma, and the actual Sangha and the relative Sangha?
So my analogy of Bach doesn't work. Okay.
It does. I understand. I know it works in making me understand what, but my question is, what is the purpose in the spiritual development of understanding these differences, I guess?
I don't quite understand. So you mean why discuss the absolute one, in other words? Because I mean, if you want to learn music, you need Bach, don't you? You need a teacher, don't you?
Yes.
And you need spiritual, you need other practitioners. So you're asking maybe that's good enough. Why talk about the absolute one is what you're saying, perhaps. Yeah?
Kind of, yes.
Isn't it really? Well, that's because the relative one is the expression of it. I mean, here, the difference, well, okay, let me think about this. If I use Bach as the analogy, and it does work, the relative musician is the person called Bach is the human being who appears in front of you, who is the musician. But I mean, where is the actual knowledge? Where's the real knowledge that you're relying upon? What are you relying upon? If you rely upon Bach as a human being, what are you relying upon? If you want his music, what are you relying upon? What is the thing you need?
His music.
It's his knowledge of music.
His knowledge, yes.
And that's his mind. That's his mind. So that's the absolute Buddha. The Buddha's, Bach is just a human being's body, which is physical. His actual knowledge is not physical, and that's his actual mind. So the point here where it doesn't work with Bach, the point where it works with the Buddha is because when Cyril becomes a Buddha, you are only the mind, Cyril. You're holding all that knowledge, all that wisdom, all that compassion. That is who you actually are finally, and you don't need a body. That's your actual knowledge. But the body one is the relative one because I can't communicate with your mind. So you need out of compassion to manifest in a body so I can see you and hear you. That's the point. The actual knowledge is really the point. The actual Buddha is the mind. But what good is that? Because I can't access your mind. So out of compassion, you, Cyril, Buddha, will manifest in a body looking like me and talking like me so I can also become my Buddha. That's the background for it. You get my point a bit?
Yes, thank you.
I mean, in other words, Bach has got all that music in him. He's happy. He's done the job. But out of kindness, he writes it all down in those little notations. That's the relative Dharma. You understand my point? And then the spiritual community are those who've already realized it or are moving along, working together, becoming their own Bach as inspiration for me to become also Bach. So the real point of that, and it's a really good question, is that the actual knowledge, the actual Buddha is not physical and you can't see it. It's the mind. But we need the relative one in order to become it ourselves. It's a good point, Phil. Thank you. Are we clear?
Is it maybe because to understand also that not to get too attached to the relative one, that's why we have to also understand the actual one?
Well, I mean, you could say that. I mean, well, no, maybe the way to say that, maybe it might be, we can't judge. You know, maybe your Bach has got a big bulbous nose and he's got a crooked ear, but you know, you don't judge him by his cover. You see that the knowledge he's got is actually real knowledge. So you don't care about, yeah, we can get very caught up in the external because we're so attached to bodies. It's true. So you could have, I mean, I've seen all kinds of teachers, for example, like there's one Geshe who's, I mean, one that I know who looked he looks like a country bumpkin. He looks short, he's kind of short and lumpy and he moves and he wriggles. He doesn't look like he's got any realizations, but he's a highly evolved being, but you can't tell by looking. So we can easily judge the cover, a person by their cover, you know, which is a really important point. Like that they say in the Mahayana teachings, the Bodhisattva teachings, we don't know who anybody is, so you cannot judge. I mean, there are so many stories like that. Or on the other hand, yeah, people love the Dalai Lama. He's so charismatic. He's so funny and wonderful. People adore him. And they would use that as the basis for relying upon him. So in the same way that you can't dismiss a person who looks like fat and ugly because he could be a realized being. And just because a person makes you feel good is also not a valid basis. So yes, that's a danger. Absolutely, you're right. Got to go beyond the external. You're very true. It's right. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful. What else, people?
Yes, we have 2 questions in the chat. Juhi,
Good.
would you like to ask?
Sure. I get confused now and then between reliance and refuge.
No difference.
Oh.
Same. It's just the way they use the word refuge. We mightn't call that in daily life, would we? You don't say, I take refuge in a doctor. So that's why I tend to use the word rely, because it's more reasonable, the way how we talk in our language, isn't it? They have the same meaning, exactly the same meaning. No difference.
So even for the 4 opponent powers, the 2 mean the same?
What do you mean? What do
Oh,
you
there's
mean?
no refuge in the 4 opponent.
Reliance. No, okay, there's an interesting point that in the reliance one is curious. Okay, we could see the first one is you have this regret.
Regret.
That's the first one. You acknowledge the negative things you've done and you regret them because you don't want future suffering. So the second step is whom can I rely upon? The first part of that is definitely the same. That's refuge in the Buddha, definitely. Okay. But there's a second part, and this throws us a little bit. The second part is where they say we need to rely upon sentient beings. And this gets confusing. So let me explain what they mean by that. This is where the word rely is used specifically for the relationship to sentient beings. So there's 2 parts. Again, let me repeat. The second step, the reliance, there are 2 parts. The first part is, whom can I turn to? That's the doctor. So I take refuge in the Buddha. I rely upon the Buddha. But the second part, they call it reliance. And this is the compassion component. Because they say, here I am on the Mahayana path, and I'm trying to become a Buddha. And the basis of that is compassion. Empathy with the suffering of others, and we're wanting to have compassion. Okay, so the first step, I regret the things I've done because I don't want future suffering. The second step in relation to compassion is I also even now want to I regret because I don't want others to suffer. So that's compassion. So why they say rely is like this, that if I want to cultivate compassion, and this is the goal in the second step, I want to develop compassion. First step, I want to have renunciation. I don't want future suffering for myself. The second step, having relied upon the Buddha, the second part is now I'm going to have compassion for sentient beings. So in order to cultivate compassion, what do I need? What do I rely upon? I've got to have suffering sentient beings. I've got to meet suffering sentient beings. I've got to know about suffering sentient beings. I've got to see them. And then in that sense, in order for me to get compassion, I need suffering sentient beings. So in that sense, they refer to it as relying upon sentient beings. I mean, it's a bit abstract sounding, but do you get it or not? And if not,
I do.
Yeah. So as Geshe Sopa said, actually the bodhisattvas need their enemies. That's the best basis of compassion. Do you understand? So that's why they call it rely. It's kind of curious. We've got to spell it out a bit, but it's really clear. If you want to become the best doctor, what do you need most? You need suffering people, don't you? If you never met a suffering person, how can you become the best doctor? So you need to meet suffering people. You can't wait for those suffering people to walk in your door so you can develop into the best doctor possible. That's the energy of the bodhisattvas. They don't want to be up in the mountains living nicely among the trees. They want to come down to the crazy cities where all the crazy people are, because they need that energy to inspire them to get courage to continue to becoming a Buddha by developing amazing compassion. Do you understand?
Yeah.
That's good. That's clear. But in general, when it comes to the Buddha, the word refuge and rely is the same. In relation to sentient, this particular use of the word rely here, in relation to sentient beings, it's just the way they say it. You wouldn't say refuge and sentient beings there. That's a really good point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. What else, people?
And Mark, you had a question?
Yes, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Venerable Robina.
Okay,
I had just a clarification, the terms Arya being and then Arhat and Bodhisattva.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
Differences?
Very good point. Very good. There are indeed, yeah. Okay, so there's 2 main kind of goals in Buddhism, 2 main paths. One is the achievement of your own liberation from suffering and its causes. And the word there for that is nirvana, your own liberation from suffering and its causes. When you've accomplished that, you are called a Hinayana Arhat. Arhat or Arhat means literally enemy destroyer. You've destroyed the enemy, karma and delusions. You've cut karma and delusions. You've achieved your own liberation from suffering. You've achieved your own nirvana. You are now a Hinayana Arhat. You've destroyed the enemies. Now, if you're on the Mahayana path, you now achieve bodhicitta and you become a bodhisattva. Eventually, when you become a Buddha, you have now become a Mahayana Arhat. You've destroyed not only the causes, you've destroyed all suffering and all the delusions, and you've added bodhicitta to the mix, and you're now a bodhisattva, you're now a Mahayana Arhat. You've achieved the liberation of Buddhahood. The first one's called the enlightenment of achievement of liberation from suffering and its causes, and you're an Arhat, a Hinayana Arhat, and now on the Mahayana one, you're a Mahayana Arhat. You've just all the enemies and you become a Buddha. Now the word Arya means superior being, and anyone on the Hinayana or the Mahayana path who has achieved the realization of emptiness is a superior being, an Arya being. Is that clear?
Yes, that's very clear. Thank you.
Okay, good. Arya, wait a minute, Arya being, wait a minute. Arya, superior being. I suddenly had a doubt, thinking it only refers to the Mahayana beings. No, it's the same. Arya, superior. Once you've realized emptiness, once you've cut the root of all delusions, you haven't become an Arhat yet. An Arhat is fully developed in which of these two paths. Arya, you're on the way to it. It's a certain stage of development where you've realized emptiness for the first time. So from there, you can't fall back. If you keep practicing that realization of emptiness, you'll eventually achieve the Hinayana goal of becoming a Hinayana Arhat. And if you keep, and then you add bodhicitta to it, you'll eventually become a Buddha, which is the Mahayana Arhat. You with me? Okay, good one. Thank you, Mark. Hello, Amjad. Talk to me.
Hello, Venerable. Thank you for tonight. This isn't so much a question, but speaking of refuge, and I've been practicing and studying for a while now, and I've been really seeing the importance of taking refuge now day by day.
That's
and
right.
I was wondering if you'd offer such an opportunity at some point. If you
Well, I mean, okay. Where's Nina? Gone Nina, or maybe Lars, or Nina? Where's Nina? She gone, or Lars? Maybe Lars. Where's Lars?
I'm not gone, Venerable. I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, Nina's actually. So maybe at the end of this module, or do we have a plan to offer it at some point in our series of teachings, Lars or Nina?
Yes, we could definitely do it both in the center and online. That would be a nice idea.
Okay, well, maybe that we can work out a date at the end of this module.
Yes.
Or it doesn't have to be the end of this module. It could be the end of any time, whatever suits all of us. We can find a date that suits people. So look into that, Lars, and see if we can do that. And then, anybody else who's interested, you can email Lars or put your note in the, put your note in the text there, and we can work out a date that suits everybody.
Yes, we will send out an announcement through the usual channels from Tara.
But I think it's good to also check the timings, because if you've got people in the Australian continent, no, there's nobody here from Australia. I don't think. Is there anybody here in the Australian continent? There could be. So just check the dates and times. I know it's a very narrow window of opportunity, to get a time that suits both North America, South America, and Europe and Australia. But we might need the Australian one if there's no one here. But so check the times and and to get people to check the one that suits them best. Yeah.
Thank you, Amjad, for raising the suggestion, and thank you, Venerable, for.
Okay, darling. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And that's something we should talk about in this module, because it's refuge. So maybe we can start that conversation now, actually. Let's discuss this. Let's make this the beginning of the conversation of this one. If you do decide you'd like to be a Buddhist and formalize it by taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, clearly, we can do it in our minds, but there's always something that's really stressed in the Buddhist tradition, the power of the embodiment of those qualities right in front of you as a real human being. I mean, I remember Lama Zopa said the Buddha's dead. So the the only time the Four Noble Truths will become real for you is when you get it from the mouth of a person in front of you. That's my words, you know. And I think this is this is both the validity of validating both Buddha and then a person we label a teacher who in our life is the one who represents the Buddha for us, you know. It really makes sense that it's powerful to have that. So it's really, and also we're creatures of form and habit. It's really nice to have formal things. It reminds us, you know, it's very powerful. So, okay, so let's say as a person who wants to take refuge, like Amjad just said, then how do you judge, how do you decide whom you take it with? Well, that's exactly what we're discussing here, you know. You check up on the tradition, you check up on the Buddha, then you check up on because lots of teachings of the Buddha, but you've got to check up on I would say first the Buddhist center. So here we've got this particular center here, you know, Laksam in Zurich or any other of the centers. Then you check on the teachers. You check on the teacher. You have to do that. You must do that. But I think already can give you some confidence if you check up on the center. So in this case, you check up on Laksam. You then see it's part of an organization called the FPMT, and you then see that's run by a person like Lama Zopa and established by him and his teacher called Lama Yeshe back in the 70s. So you do your research, you know, because there's lots of Buddhist centers around the world, lots of Buddhist organizations. And with respect, some are peanuts, you know, some are not valid, some are not useful, some are deluded. I mean, it's just normal in the world. This is the way the world is. So you really need to be confident. You really need to check, you know, it's so important to do that. You really need to check. So you are confident. And I love the word confident. Look at, I mean, certainly in English anyway, it's got, you know, the Latin derivative, confide, with trust. We don't like the word trust or faith sometimes in modern language. It sounds kind of a bit religious, but it's very necessary to have really strong trust or confidence. And how you get that is not just by thinking, oh, look at the Dalai Lama, he's so cute, he's so charismatic, he must be a Buddha. This is an absurd basis for choosing anybody. You know, this is what I said before. I've known some teachers who are really unusual behavior. You know, there's one Lama who's famous, who speaks really unusually. You can't understand what he's saying sometimes, you know, so you'd think, well, if he behaves peculiarly, he mustn't be a good Lama. And then you've got someone charismatic like the Dalai Lama. I mean, I've heard many people who, like some teachers, modern teachers, let's say, charismatic, who have been proving to be not very valid. So you can't just base it on the external, as we were discussing before. You really check up on the lineage, you check on their qualities, you check on their teachings, you check on their students, you check on the organization that they're part of. You must do this. And this is what we do with anybody. You're choosing a musician, you'd absolutely do that, you know. So then you need, and the reason for that is you need confidence. You've got to have your own confidence that you're moving in the right direction. And then, you know, for example, in a situation like this, where Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you know, I'm one of his students. This is, you know, and Laksama is part of the organization that I'm part of, you know, Nina and this at least some of the students I know, Nina, for example, and Jeff, you know, they're students of Lama Zopa also. I'm one of the fellow students. So he's given me permission to do refuge and lay vows. So, you know, you check on all of this. And then you check, I mean, you'd have to, if I'm going to be doing it, you've got to check on me. I'm sorry, I can't, I mean, you know, I'm a peanut, I'm a maniac, I shout all the time, but you've got to check up. So you are confident. You are confident, because the fact is there are different levels of having a teacher according to the different levels of practice. But, you know, the ideal one is we try to see that person as an embodiment of the Buddha. And the more we understand the teachings, the more that we can see the sort of that's of something viable, you know. But we really need to be confident, right? Because we're going to be making a karmic connection with that person. Because you're going to be sitting down in front of that person, you're gonna, you know, so, and it's like this person is representing Buddha for you. So you need to be confident. And this is the checking you need to do so that you are confident. I keep saying that. You have to be confident. Just because your friend is doesn't mean you have to be. You know, you've got different karmic connections with different people. It's really important, you know. Because we develop a relationship with each other. If I'm going to be doing it, I mean, I've been given permission and I will do it. But we're developing a really close relationship, you know, kind of like we're shaking hands and agreeing we're going to work on the spiritual path together. You do your job, I'll do my job, we'll get along nicely, you know. Are we communicating here? So that's your part of the deal, okay? That's your part of the deal. Yes, Juhi, talk to me.
Something you said tripped me up a little bit. So if you give the vows, and I take refuge, I'm taking refuge in the triple gems.
Yeah, that's right.
You as my, let's say, as my guru,
No, you're taking refuge. No, you're taking refuge. So let's just go more into this. Okay, there's two parts to it. In the ceremony, this one we're discussing here is just refuge, but often in the ceremony, when it's done at the same time, after we've taken refuge, we will do the layperson's vow. So there's two separate things. But the point is you're taking refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha. So what you're doing is because, like, again, I'm going to use the analogy, for goodness sake, you want to study music, you check up on all the music schools, you choose one, you go to Mr. Bach, or you go to Mr. Fred, who is Bach is Buddha and Fred is a teacher. Let's use the analogy. So of course you're going to rely upon Bach and Bach's music, but how else can you do that unless you have a human being in front of you who embodies Bach for you? So you're not taking, you could argue you're also relying upon the teacher, but you actually relying upon Bach and his music, but you need to have trust and confidence that that teacher will channel Bach's music properly to you. So you're developing a relationship with that teacher who's going to teach you how to become your Bach. That's the way to see it.
So technically, whoever gives me the vows or the refuge is automatically my teacher.
And because you've chosen that.
And because I've chosen them.
That's exactly right, darling. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Exactly.
One more related question, kind of.
Yeah.
There is a course by Geshe La, Foundation of Geshe Tashi, sorry.
Okay, that's right. That was a course he gave years ago in the 90s in London. That's right.
There is still a course called FBT, Foundation
that's the course, yes. And
that's his, yeah. So I sent in my application a couple of months ago, and apparently they do enrollments for new students every September. And it's a 2-year.
I don't know, where's that course taught now? Do you know?
It's online. I can give you the link here. I have it open.
It used to be when Geshe Tashi was the resident teacher at Jamyang in London. That was one of the courses that Jamyang taught. But now I think he's now not the teacher there. He's now in India as the abbot of Saramay Monastery. And I think his students run this course privately on some website. I don't know what it is.
Yes, that's the one. I just sent you the link. Yeah. So it's online. It's a 2-year course. There's a lot of commitment and dedication naturally that they're asking for, which I'm ready for. But the reason why I got interested in that was sort of to, just based on your recommendation earlier during the Guru Devotion module, that check up on others, see what they resonate with you or not, or vice versa.
Yes.
I have not heard from them. I don't know if I'll get enrolled or not, but I still want to go ahead and take my vows. You understand?
I understand. So that's for you to decide who you'd like to do that with. That's for you to decide.
Okay. But I can still take my vows if I want to, because I'm pretty confident here, and I can still go on with that course.
Of course, you can do as many teachers as you like. You choose them wisely. It's best if you do them all in the. Yeah, of course it is. Of course, darling. No question about that. No question.
Yeah.
But if you don't get answers, and maybe they're not doing it for a while, I don't know. But there's lots of other good courses around, like there's this course, but then in the Jamia in the center in London, the resident Geshe there does courses. There's lots of other courses around. So you can look, keep checking. Good idea. Perfect, Julie.
Yeah, this is a live teaching that he does.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Yeah,
he the link to. Where did you send
it? I did. I just put it in the chat here.
Oh, I see. Let me have a look at it.
Yeah.
Find my chat. Where's my chat? I don't know if I find it.
The Zoom chat.
No, I know, but I'm trying to find it. Oh, here we go. Chat. Okay, where is it? The very top, I suppose. Juhi. I don't know how to find it. Is it the bottom or the top?
It's the last message.
Oh, I see it now. Here, okay, I now see it. Okay, let me have a look. Let me have a look for you, darling. Let me see. Oh, yeah, Geshe Tashi. That's right. Online course in Buddhist philosophy and practice.
Yes.
Ken Rinpoche Geshe Tashi Tsering's Foundation of Buddhist Thought offers a comprehensive overview of Buddhists. 20 years of foundation. Read more. FPMT course, FBT course.
It sounds pretty intriguing to me because
it's a wonderful course. No, it's no question. Yeah. I'm not sure that it's a live teaching. I think it's using his books and it's going to be facilitated by somebody, isn't it? Live teaching. This is what the live teaching. Read more. Look at this. Wait a minute. I don't know. Read more. It's coming. Live teachings. No, there's no question. If you checked up on Geshe La, then it's perfect, darling. You follow what you think is the right thing to do. But I can't. Why don't you? I think it's just anyway. I will have a look at it. If you want to discuss it with me, why don't you just email me?
I would love to. Yes.
Email me. Get my email address and email me. I can look at it and I can discuss it with you. That's a good idea. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, sweetheart. Good. So who else is there? Time to go, Neely. Anybody else?
Lorraine
yes,
and Gonzalo.
yes, Lorraine, my dear. Hello.
Yes, it occurs to me that to have confidence in teachings of the Dharma and teachings of the Buddha, you need to have confidence enough in yourself to accept.
That's exactly right, honey. What's an absolutely perfect point. That's
Yes.
often the biggest problem with spiritual teachings. We have a misconception that, you know, I've got to put all my reliance on somebody else and I'm this little girl who's being pulled from pillar to post. That's the big problem. We follow attachment half the time, which is
Yes.
infantile. So you've got to have you've got to be
a
very
lot of that.
grounded in yourself and know use your own common sense. Exactly, Lorraine.
Yes, I have a lot of gaslighting in my history that I'm trying to deprogram. So I was wondering if you have if there's a specific mantra or a practice.
No,
that
there's not. Keep trusting your own innate common sense, which you have bucket loads of, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Screw the gaslighters. Believe your own. This is the one we have to have, honey child. Give up these damn labels. Look into your own bloody mind, girl. Look at your virtues. Look at your good qualities. Look at your negative ones and own all of them and know you're in charge and you can become a marvelous version of yourself. Come on,
Thank
Lorraine. That's my advice, babe. All right?
All right.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Good, darling. My advice to all of you.
Gonzalo.
What else, Zalo? Okay, Zalo, talk to me.
Hello, Venerable. So I'm also pretty confident on taking refuge. And about the point that Juhi was making, so I understand that after you take refuge, you can still check on different teachers.
You can have as many teachers as you like.
Right. And can they be from different traditions?
You can have as many
or
teachers
do you
as you like and as many traditions as you like. But the bottom line is, like Lorraine's point is, you've got to have confidence in yourself to judge wisely. Otherwise, you'll be all over the place and ridiculous. Of course, you can have more teachers, but you've got to be grounded in yourself and knowing how you can take from all the different traditions and put them together. Because if you just run around shopping, it's like a yoga, you know, it's the same thing. You say, oh, I like yoga, but you know, logically, as you home in on yoga, you choose a teacher, you choose a style. Of course, you can go to 6 other yoga teachers, but you know, if you're not really grounded in your own self, you can get really confused because when you get to the details, one yoga teacher says, put your thumb this way, and the other one says, put it that way. So you're going to be confused. So you've got to be grounded first. And then from there, you develop your own, the different traditions to help enhance your fundamental one. You've got to have a ground in one, and then everything else enhances that. So for me, in my case, I happened to fall into the lap of Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe. It turned out they were Gelugpa. I didn't know that. They turned out they were Tibetan Buddhist. I didn't know that. I fell into their lap. So I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, and I turned out I'm a Gelugpa. But I've got Sakya teachings, I've got Kagyu teachers, and I've got Nyingma teachers. I've got teachers in all the traditions, and they enhance my fundamental place, you know. So that's the purpose of doing more. But you've got to be intelligent and grounded and reasonable, and just sort of attachment and running around shopping would be a disaster for your mind. You with me, Zalo?
Yeah, perfect.
Good, Doc. Thank you so much.
Can I have one more question? It's
Yes,
a practical.
Good. It's all practical, Zalo. Come on. If it's not, then don't say it.
Yes, absolutely. But this is kind of more concrete. When I do offerings in the morning, I only do water bowls because I don't know what to do if I offer rice or fruits, like what to do with those afterwards.
I understand.
I mean,
all the offerings, any offerings you make like that, you know, depends on the practice. But the water, you would then, you know, you've got this tradition of the 7 water bowls. That's lovely. You tip the water out in a clean place. But I mean, you know, if you're offering other things, you could, I mean, there's a little, you can eat it yourself. There's a mantra you can say to purify the attachment, and you can eat it yourself. Nothing wrong with that.
great. So I kind of put it there and I leave it a couple of hours.
What?
I mean, I leave a fruit for a couple of hours in the altar, and then I take it back and eat it.
Well, I mean, it depends on why you're offering. I mean, is it a particular formal offering you're making, or is it just so that you feel like an offering? What is it? Particular practice, or is it just something you want to make? You offer some? What is it?
I mean, I think they usually say like they offer incense, they offer fruits, not just water bowls.
Basically, it's offering the objects of the senses, isn't it? You know, so any of those offerings. But equally, when you have the fruit yourself for your breakfast, you would first offer it to the Buddha in your mind anyway. You would do that. So whether you put it on the altar or on your own breakfast table, it's the same attitude, you know.
Right.
There are some practices where there are offerings that you would, different levels of practices, but in the ordinary sense of offering something as a morning practice, the water bowls, you can't, it's a marvelous practice. You don't need to do more. It's fantastic practice. It's got everything in it. It's fantastic. Okay.
Perfect.
All
Yeah,
right,
perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, darlings, it's time to go nearly 5 more minutes. Lorraine has got her hand up again. No, she hasn't. No, she hasn't. Who else is there, Tara? That's it.
No, that's it.
Okay, so how many more classes have we got? One more, isn't it? Or 2?
One more, and then actually we have a week off because there's 5 Thursdays in this month.
Okay.
So this is number 3. Next week is week 4.
Okay,
We'll
good.
have a short break.
Okay, good. So I'll try and summarize everything next week and look into things. But again, I really request you to read Venerable Dundar's teachings. He gives all the details. He's wonderful. Okay, people.
I had one last question, sorry.
Good. Wonderful, Juhi.
For the refuge. I'm actually coming to the Shantideva Center in New York City.
Good.
For your in-person teaching there.
Oh, wonderful. Good. I'll see you there.
April 8th and 9th.
Good, darling. Yeah.
Is refuge better in person or does it not matter?
I'm going to be doing it there, am I?
I don't know.
Or does it say so in the court? I think I'm not
Doesn't
sure.
say anything.
Well, it was always nicer in person. Yeah. So why don't you check up?
Okay.
Check up there, and we can check up. I think we might be doing, but you can check with the center if we're going to be doing it. I can't remember, but it's always nice to do it in person for sure, Juhi.
Okay.
I look forward to seeing you, honey.
Okay. Yes. Very
Make yourself known to me when I come there. Okay?
I will.
Good, darling.
I'll be like doing this to you.
Well, you do that. Okay, sweethearts, that's it. So we think an hour and a half, gone like a dream. All these seeds we've planted, all this programming of our mind we've done, a little bit more understanding coming, a little bit more clarity, a little bit more wisdom, hopefully, and a little bit more confidence on this path of ours, this internal path. So how delighted we are by doing this, and we dedicate all these seeds we've planted. We think when they do fully ripen as our Buddhahood, why did we do this? We did it so we can be a benefit to sentient beings. How amazing. The most vast body motivation you can have, bodhicitta. How amazing. Changshub Semchog Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyuchig Ke Panyam Pa Me Panyang Gong Ne Gondu Pa Ba Shog. That's all, people. Thank you so much, dearest ones. Tara, Lars, Nina, everybody, all your questions. Thank you so much, everyone. Much love. See you in a second next week. Thank you all.
Thank you, Venerable Rita.
I hope you get your voice back.
Meditations. Okay.